Hi, I'm Elle. I'm going to talk about the strategies for saying no. Now, if you search the topic, there are numerous articles, like lots of articles about how to say no to your boss, but there are not a lot of articles that talk about how to say no to your team as well. So I will mention a couple that, general how to say no, but I will focus mainly on how to tactfully say no as a manager of people. Now, in this talk, I'm going to have 5 acts. The first act is about the experience, talking about when situations that you might want to say no exist or arise. And then act number 2 will be about reflecting about why we have trouble saying no to people. Then act number 3, we're going to think about the concepts and ideas, for example, about which direction should we say no to and how does that work. Act number 4 will be the meat of the talk, which I'll talk about 11 strategies that you can use, and I will provide scripts that you can follow because most people like using scripts. It makes it easier. And then the last one, we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk a bit more about when and what should we say yes to, which is the opposite. So let's start with the situation. Act number 1. So many times requests come from our manager, our peers, or adjacent business units, or even people that report to us. Now, also, let's say that you are an individual contributor and you are very, very good at your job. You're very accomplished, and now you got promoted to be an engineering manager, a manager of people. Now, you used to deliver really well before, but now you have additional responsibilities of looking after people and making sure that the work gets done. And you want to say yes to all the things, but it means that you don't have time to do all the things that you need to do. It means that you have too many balls to juggle, too many tasks, and too many jobs to do. So saying yes to everything means that you don't have enough time to accomplish all the things. Saying yes to everything means that nothing really is a priority anymore. And in reality, we cannot literally say yes to all the things that come our way. Now, learning is making of meaning, and meaning is usually very highly personal to each and every one of us. And we need to reflect on our personal experience to understand where we stand and where we want to be. So let's try and think about why. Now, for most of us, saying no doesn't come very naturally. We feel lousy disappointing a colleague, guilty about turning down our boss, and anxious about denying a request. We want to be viewed as a go-to person, like a team player. Now, a couple of years ago, we worked with a guy that was that person. He was the go-to person. Where marketing came for him for help, and support came for him to help, and then he has his team to manage as well. And he was always very helpful from with everyone, but it just means that he didn't get to do his job. And it means that when performance review came, he wasn't really doing very well on his performance reviews. Another problem that we have is that agreeing to work on too many assignments and pitching on too many projects leaves us stretched and stressed out. Being able to say no is vital to both our success and the success of our company. But that doesn't make it any easier to do. So we've heard the success advice before, like raise your hand for every opportunity, volunteer for more projects, say yes to everything. And that's all great with one exception. Like when you're overloaded and when you are stretched, saying yes to too many things is a mistake. So let's talk about why. Now, I hate to say no to people, which is why most of the time I take too many things on. But saying no is hard because we are a species that treat agreement as affection and denial as rejection. It may be unavoidable that others will be disappointed by our response, by our saying no to people. Also, being aware of our own tendencies and inclination to regularly say yes and trying to be nice to everyone is the first step. We should understand that it is not realistic to please everyone. We actually cannot do that, and that our own needs matter as well. We can be assertive about our needs, priorities, and boundaries without being aggressive. Now, if we can't say no, it's easiest for others to take advantage of us, which means that it will use up a lot of our energy. The best way to troubleshoot our energy drain may be to reduce how often we say yes and get more practice at saying no. So doing too much, it means that when we take on too many things, we neglect our needs, and it leads to either a feeling of resentment or regret. Saying no in a healthy way gives us better control over our time, our life, our work, and our career. Now, many leaders don't stop to reflect because they're too busy with business as usual. They're usually more reactive than proactive. They don't stop to question what they are doing. They just go along with the flow. And if we diffuse our energy trying to do a little bit of everything, we will always be in conflict with ourselves. Instead, we should decide what we want to do, or should, or need to do, and we need to optimize for that goal while be willing to let go of all the other things that are less important. Whatever we decide to do becomes our compass, our North Star, and we build our vision, our company vision around that. Now, let's think about some of the concepts that we have around this topic. Now, anyone that has the authority to say yes or no to particular work is demonstrating leadership. Now, when we think about which direction we can say no to, a good solid no can travel in any directions. Saying no upwards is harder, because especially with a strongly hierarchical culture, because it's hard to say no to your boss. Saying no downwards can feel much simpler because we expect reports to abide by it. But if we don't do it early enough, that can still be quite difficult. And also, we can say no lateral to peers in the companies and other teams that we work with. It can be especially challenging to say no to our boss and colleagues at work because we care what other people think, and we don't want to experience any negative consequences that might come from saying no to them. I really like this quote by Steve Jobs that says, people think focus means saying yes to the thing that you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to 100 other good things. Because when we say yes to too many things, we end up saying no to the most important things for us. It means that we don't set priorities to what's important to us. Instead, we can decide to define the shape of our life and what's important to us, but what we say no to. Now, do you know that when the word priority was first introduced into English in the 16th century, it was used almost solely in the singular form? There was never plural until the 20th century. It was only in the 20th century when people started using the plural form regularly. Because we should only have, and the idea behind this is that we should only have one thing to focus on, one priority. But in today's world, can we really limit our focus to just one thing that deserves our attention? That's pretty hard. Now, I want to raise one thought of the day for today, and I'm going to come back to this later. And the idea is that if it's not urgent and if it's not important, then it's time to say no. Act number 4. I'm going to finish this talk a lot quicker than expected. Act number 4, where I'm going to talk about innovating adaptations that are the ultimate results of learning and strategies of how we can say no to people we work with. The first one is having a defined vision and goals. So as we said, if everything seems important, try to match your tasks to your organization's current mission and vision statement. Hopefully your company has one, and remove anything that doesn't directly support those goals. Let the appropriate stakeholders also know what you're removing and not working on. Goals communicate what we should be working on. They should be crystal clear and guide decisions on what we should focus on. Now, the script that we can use for that is, I'm focused on serving our company's best interest of insert goal here. With that in mind, no, it is not in our best interest for me to take over Z right now. I'm happy to revisit it next month, next fiscal year, next quarter, and do we want to put a check-in meeting in the calendar to look at it again then? A script. Number 2, yes and. This is one of my favorite. It comes, if you ever do improv, there's an exercise that says yes and. In this example, the script is, yes, we can do this. And all we need to do is to delay the start of this other project that is currently on the roadmap. Simple. You can also appeal to authority. You can go back to your boss and say, well, tell me which one is more important. Should I work on this one or should I work on that one? Decisions are rarely as simple as black and white, right or wrong, and typically they involve value trade-offs, what we decide to work on. Do we want to, and you can also say, do we want to revisit the timeline together now? And what part can we change or drop to make this happen? Number 3, and almost yes. The script here is, give me time to think about that. That buys us time to know more about the requested commitment. The almost yes empowers us to find out just how unreasonable that request is before we make a justifiable decision to decline it. Number 4, not yet. This is super helpful for roadmap discussions. It's not that we're not going to do it, it's just that we're not going to do it right now. So this helps diffuse product conversations. It is that it's not we're doing it right now, but we will do it sometime in the future. A practical reason why we can't say yes now is that we don't have enough time. So if we would consider saying no to the request, let people know when they can try again in the future. If the request is urgent, people often find an alternative. It can also be, I can help you with X once you have done Y, or I'm waiting for this to happen before I do this. Number 5 is delegating, which I think a lot of managers, especially new managers, don't do enough. And the question is can you delegate this job to somebody who is better at doing this than you? Somebody is better for the job. Delegating tasks and jobs and assignments for your report is really allowing them to grow in their role. So you give them an opportunity to grow in the role, in their skills, in their capabilities. And the script here is, you can also say, I can't help you with this, but Bob can. Shall we talk to Bob? Number 6, especially when you work with a team of people, you should create policies for the work that you do so that we can refer people to standardized responses. You can say, issues like this belong to the rostered support person. This week, this is Jill. Or you can say, as per the docs here, and provide a link, we can't action work without a detailed ticket. So they can't just slide in the work and ask you to do it this week. Number 7 is help me say yes. And the script here is ask a lot more questions. And as managers, again, new managers don't usually ask enough questions. And it's good, it allows you to learn more about the requests before you say no. It allows you to learn more facts about the problem so you can support a yes decision. For example, let's say Jill comes to Bob and says, well, I want to upgrade the database from version 5 to version 7. And instead of Bob saying, no, I know it's not going to work, just focus on your work, Bob can actually ask, well, why do you think it's needed right now? And Jill might say, well, version 5 is no longer supported and it has some security issues that I would like to implement. And you can continue asking more questions to understand why Jill wants to do the task that she wants to do. Number 8, appeal to budget. So since we are a business that needs to be profitable to a degree, and there's always limitations to what we can afford, budget constraints can be one way to say no. For example, a team member would like to attend a conference. So the script can be, we have 15 people from the team that would like to attend RailsConf. That means X expense for the company, and we can't afford it right now. Maybe we can limit that to 5 people. So let's decide who's the most useful to go on the conference, to the conference. Number 9, this is really another script. This is like when you really need to say no, it's just rip the bandage off. So when you know that you need to say no, it is better to say it quickly than to delay and drag the process. It's going to be a lot easier and less painful. There will be situations when we have to literally put our foot down and as we grant a polite but firm no. This is essential when we want to define clear boundaries with the team. Now, when we do that, we should explain the why. Don't simply say no. Share your logic, share your facts, share the reasoning behind your decision, and most important, share the values that motivated your conclusion. Because if we don't, others will fill the vacuum that we leave with their fears and their biases and their assumptions about why we said no. Elaborating is the way to prevent reports getting also demotivated about, oh, I didn't get that, and I don't understand why. And the last one, you can act together as a team. Establishing relationships and sharing the decision amongst the group of people makes a no easier as it becomes a consensus and everybody has had a chance to be heard. As a leader, we are responsible for making great decisions and also build great teams. And the best way to do it is to involve as much of the team as appropriate in the current decision. We talk about leadership styles, and this one is a democratic leadership, which is useful in many cases, but not in all cases. And this is a quote by Michael Loeb from Managing Humans. And in the book, he says, your team is collectively smarter than you simply because there are more of them. More importantly, by including them in the decision process and creating a team where they feel that they can say no, you're creating trust in the team. Now, one last caveat when you work with people pleasers. So I'm currently working with a team of lovely, lovely people. They are all sweetheart. They are all people pleasers, and they have really hard time saying no. So when I'm working with them, I am aware that anything that I ask of them, they will say yes, regardless if they're at capacity or not. So which will lead to extra work, extra hours, and possibly burnout. So knowing this, I can preemptively anticipate that they are at capacity and include the following in my request. You can pause working on X while you work on my new shiny feature, and that is fine to do. You don't have to do both. Now, I want to ask people here in the crowd, I want to go through a couple of scenarios. And the scenario is someone has asked you to do a task that isn't part of your normal responsibilities. Well, what would you say? So,
it's important, but it's, Mike's job.
Yes. Yep. Anybody else? You can delegate, or you can say, let's say somebody from, so we had this situation recently in a workshop, and we had a woman that got instructions from HR, from somebody from HR, not from head of HR, that some work needed to be done. But it didn't come from the head of HR. So what can they do? Yes, Micah?
You could say maybe later.
Maybe later, yes. But she needs it tomorrow. Anyone else? Well, one says, it's not my job. One says delegating, maybe later.
I think it depends, too, on if it's something I'm interested in doing.
Yes. Yeah.
For yesterday, and then we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we can also, again, appeal to authority and ask for priorities. Yes. Hi, Esteban.
Or say, what do you want me to stop doing?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if the work isn't in your typical role, this is when to refer back to company or team vision and goals. And how does that taking on this new responsibility and for how long helps us achieve our goals? So we said it's not in our role, maybe delegating, maybe appeal to authority, and also go back to company vision and goals. Scenario number 2, your manager just asked you to do something that was not scheduled for this sprint. What do you say? Exactly. What do I need to take out of this sprint to be able to make this happen? If this isn't your typical role, this is when to refer back, no, I have my wrong notes. And I think we are in act number 5, continuing, or the future. Like, what if? What should we say yes to instead of saying no? Now, this is thanks to Ian. He's in the crowd. And this was a talk that was done by Jonathan Maltz in Lead Dev in New York in December. The talk was called Technical Vision versus Technical Strategy, the Difference and Why It Matters. And I really like this quote. The quote is, technical vision is about saying yes to things, and technical strategy is about saying no to things so you can actually get your vision happen. And I want to talk about saying yes to what's important. When you say no to most things, you leave room to invest in what is truly important for you. We are all too busy. We take on too many things to do. Saying yes to less is the only way forward. And we do this also by setting goals. So if you have a goal that you've been putting it off, maybe you will get to it one day. Currently, you're not motivated enough to make progress or take action on it. So my question to you is this a good goal? The purpose of goals is not to improve the future. The future doesn't exist. It's only in our imagination. All that exists is in the present moment and what we do in it. So judge a goal by how well it changes our actions now. And if this goal that you have doesn't change your action now, then define a different one. Another quote from Michael Lopp that says, saying no is saying stop. And in a valley full of people who thrive on endless movement, the ability to strategically choose when it's time to stop is the sign of a manager willing to defy convention. And I want to leave you with one last question. It's what's worth doing? And what is urgent and what's important for you that you want to follow through and get done? And that's it. Thank you very much. We have time for questions, if anybody has any questions. Okay, so this reminds me of an example when we talk, so the question was, how do you still say no and maintain relationship when somebody is insistent? Is that right? This reminds me of an example that when we talk about difficult conversations, and I guess this is level number 3 that we talk about misalignment at work, which happens quite regularly. And in this example, for example, you can say, in the example that we use, I'm optimizing for performance and you optimizing for user experience. Both of those are important, but which one should we focus on for this feature now? And then if we can't get to an agreement, we can go up to our boss to get clarification of what needs to be done. That could be an example. Yeah, so this can happen with a less technical product owner or a client, and in all those situations, when there's misalignment with how long the work will take when you work with a client, is the question, right? Yeah, so in this case, I really believe in client education, in explaining what the work needs to be done. You can break it down and not keep it very technical, but explain all the things that need to be done in the process into smaller pieces. This involves also estimations, and when estimations, like people say, oh, this should only take a day, but then, it ended up taking 2 weeks, and, the client is not happy that suddenly it's taken 2 weeks. You do need to, yes? So the question is, what about a strategy of pretty much not replying when somebody's DMing you at 4:15 in the afternoon before the day ends? One, I prefer if those requests didn't come as a DM. I think they should come in open channels so you can refer them to the appropriate channels for requesting work that are public and are visible for the rest of the company. I do not recommend not replying. I prefer to actually communicate more than less, but not in private channels. So the question was about somebody that, again, is very insistent, and the conversation is escalating. In this case, I think a lot of times people want to be heard, and so active listening and listening to their pain points and emphasizing with them will reduce some of their feeling like I want this and I'm not getting what I want. But you do need to go back to what our goals are, what our objectives are, and if you can't solve it, just appeal to somebody above you to make the decision. Okay, so Mike is asking about saying no when something is dangerous. So I think this is more about parenting styles. That's not the topic of this conversation. Okay, so do I change strategies? How do I ask and request people for work, and leaving them a door to say no to me? So we say this, for example, in delegation, as an example. And in delegations, we also have a script that we teach people how to, and we say, Nate, I would like your help in writing documentations for new people in the company. I'm coming to you because you are very thorough in your instructions and you care about onboarding the new people. I've seen you work with them in the last few weeks. Can you please take responsibility for this job? And obviously, sometimes people say yes, some people say no, and that's absolutely fine to say no. I think 30% of the time people say no. But then you can ask them why not and work through their objections. So I guess it's how you ask the questions. Like I said, you can say, this is absolutely fine to say no, but I think you will be a good person for this job. Wow, okay, how much? So when situations become emotional, how much do you need to manage other people's emotions? So first of all, you cannot manage their emotions, and it's not your job. You can only manage your own emotions. I would suggest building trust and a relationship with the person first. So when you say no, you're relying on the trust that you've built before. Hi, I'm Elle. I'm a consultant at Blackmill. We do leadership training and workshops and leadership coaching, which is why it's all my examples. Yes, are taken from our workshop. So leading people and managing people takes a lot of time to do the extra work besides doing the actual work. So how do you deal with that? The first thing that comes to my mind is I mentioned a leadership style that's democratic, and that means trying to get a consensus from the team. There are multiple different leadership styles, and I'll mention just one model that was done by Daniel Goleman, and he talks about 5 different leadership styles. So you have an autocratic, a visionary, a democratic, an affiliate, and a coaching. And most people default to 1 or 2 styles. I might be missing one. Pace setting. Thank you. So 6. Most people default to one of them, but you shouldn't just default to one. You should use different ones in different situations that you are at work. And being democratic is great when you have time, but when the server is on fire and the website is down, democratic is not the way to go. So in that case, you need to be commanding and people, okay, we need to do A, B, and C, and afterwards we can go back and talk about what happened. But if you're always commanding and do A, B, and C, people will not be motivated, they will not take ownership, and it's not the right thing to do on a regular basis. So different situations, yes, you do need to do all the extra glue work to make sure that the team understands also why we are doing the work that we are doing. Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much.